All right, I am Destin. I have a YouTube channel called Smarter Every Day, and this is my friend Matt. What's up, Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt Whitman, and I have a YouTube channel called the 10-Minute Bible Hour. And together we combine our powers to create the No Dumb Questions podcast.
Yeah,
how's that?
That was great. That was wonderful. So that's what we do here. And the interesting thing about this is Matt is the history guy of the two of us. I like science. But every once in a while, you let me try to wander off into your territory, right?
My territory is a little more accessible than your territory. We did an abortive episode where I tried to teach you about nuclear propulsion, and it just went really, really poorly. But I feel like this one's going to work.
Yeah, so that's not true, but it's really, really funny. Thank you for that. So here's the backstory of how this went down. I went to London, and when I was in London, I met with our good friend Brady Heron. I said, hey, man, are you available? And he said, oh, dude. He goes, if you're here, we should go see Hamilton. It'll be my 12th time seeing it. It's actually like 4th or something like that. I think it's 4th. He goes, I would love to take you to Hamilton. And so I was all over that. I got a little bit of heat from Tara for not going with her, but I really wanted to go with Brady because he was very excited about it.
Good friends. Sometimes good friends go to musicals together.
Yeah, we do. And so we went, and in the musical, I don't know what I was expecting, really. I was expecting like Phantom of the Opera or something, but you've never been to Hamilton, I assume?
No, I've not.
Okay, it's life-changing. It's amazing. It's the story of the American Revolution told through the eyes of the people that lived it, and of course, Hamilton. But the way they do it, it's mostly an African-American cast. And so, all the people that you traditionally think of, these white landowners, the fathers of the country, like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they're all African-American. They all have amazing capabilities. All these actors and dancers are incredible. It's more or less a hip-hop musical, and it's ridiculously good. Yeah, didn't see that coming. I've obviously heard of it, but I don't know, until you go see something like that, you don't really want to know anything about it. Now I do, and I'm still cool with you over that. But no, I had no idea that was the hook. No, not at all. And so the thing was, Brady was sitting there, and the opening scene starts. You can see it go down, and I see out of the corner of my eye, I can see that Brady's watching, but he's also watching me. And I turn around after like halfway through the first song with my jaw just on the floor, and he just looks at me and goes, I know, right? It's amazing. I can't do a Brady accent, but it was incredible.
It was pretty good.
Oh, it was incredible. But, I'm not going to spoil Hamilton for you other than to say it's worth your time.
Okay.
But one thing that I noticed is you have all the interactions of the people that were instrumental in making, the American Revolution happen. They're all in this production together. And you learn pretty quickly that there's this one person. Lafayette is not a major character in Hamilton, but he's very different from everyone else. And I just got hyper interested in who Lafayette was. Like, what would motivate this person to come over to the U.S. and all this sort of stuff. So after watching Hamilton, I just wanted to learn more about Lafayette in particular. So I went to Twitter, and this is my tweet. It says, has anyone read a book about Marquis de Lafayette that you'd recommend, preferably with an audible version? And John Bicknell, John Bick 1960 says, the Marquis, Lafayette Reconsidered by Auricchio _Laura is excellent. And she replied. And I was like, okay, that sounds legit. So I just downloaded it and I listened to it, and it was amazing, Matt. I mean, this was incredible, and I want you to listen to it because I think you'll love it.
I'm sold. I'll listen to it. I mean, anything that you've recommended that heavily, I've appreciated. You're a good recommender.
It's kind of long, but what it did for me is it allowed me to understand more about this individual. So Lafayette is this person that I've briefly heard about in 8th grade history. But let me just ask you, because I know you know a lot about history and I don't, but who was Marquis de Lafayette? What do you know, Matt, about this Lafayette character?
He was a young French dude with some money who jumped in pretty early in the game with the American Revolution. He stood out amongst his peers in the eyes of Washington. There was some kind of collegial relationship between the two of them, and Lafayette played various roles in the American Revolution. I feel like he was on the other side of some fighting with maybe Benedict Arnold. after he switched sides, but I couldn't tell you where else Lafayette fought other than he was well regarded, and he and another French dude, Rochambault, I believe, played an important role in the end game of the revolution. I don't know what happened to him after that. I think that's all I got.
Okay, so admittedly, you knew way more than I did. I knew he was a French guy that came over and fought for America. Was
any of that right?
Yeah. Some of it's a little off. Like Rochambeau, the relationship between Rochambeau was a little weird because he wanted Rochambeau's post. He didn't get it.
Oh.
But yeah, it's a really interesting. So he was a very young, wealthy individual from France, and he decided he was going to make a name for himself. And everything I'm saying here comes from the book Lafayette Reconsidered by Laura Auricchio.
Okay.
So that caveat. So I highly recommend reading the book. So this is me paraphrasing what I've learned. So he comes over and he's extremely ambitious and excited, and he wants to make a name for himself. And what's really interesting is he bought a boat and he was about to come over. And before he even came over, he was warned not to come over. He got ready to go. I don't remember exactly where he was. I want to say Spain or somewhere. Like he's about to sail to America. I forget where it was exactly or what island he was on. And he was about to sail over, and he's like, hey, y'all tell Lafayette not to do this. And so you got to remember, this is back in the day when you could kind of play with information a little bit because it takes a long time.
Not like now.
Yeah, well, of course. But I mean, letters took a long time to get places, right?
Sure. It's why the Battle of New Orleans was fought after the war that the Battle of New Orleans was in.
I didn't really know that. Was it really? In the War of 1812?
Yeah, Battle of New Orleans happened after the War of 1812 was over.
I did not know that.
Yeah, as nobody knew yet.
Where they ran through the briars and they ran through the British?
That's exactly the one. They had a little bacon and they had a little beans.
They ran through the briars and they ran through the brambles and they ran through the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go. Ran so fast that the hounds couldn't catch him. Down to Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Know that whole song, buddy?
I bet you do.
I really do. I grew up with Granddaddy playing Johnny Horton's greatest hits on an 8-track in an old gray Cadillac. I could sing that whole album. Anyway, so what he did is he got ready to go over to America, and they were like, hey, the king was like, I don't think you should do that, but he kind of just did and sent a letter like, oh, well, since I didn't get your letter, I'm going to go anyway. It was pretty interesting how you could do things like that back in the day. Anyway, so he comes to America, and he shows up, and what do you know about America and England at the time? Like in terms, I call them America, but the colonies in England at the time. What's that relationship like? Of
the Revolutionary War?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a little bit on the rocks since it, ended up having a revolution and all. But yeah, I don't know. What do you want to know?
Well, here's the thing. So in my history brain, from being taught in school, I got the impression that everybody was like pro-revolution.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
you could make the case that what happened was that a few very influential people in New England intentionally moved the needle toward a greater sense of oppression that was actual reality in order to advance their liberal revolutionary ideas and get enough people whipped into a frenzy or make enough happen that there would be no coming back from the impulse of revolution. You could make that case.
That's what this book did for me. This book took me to ground level, like literally the spot of ground where anything was happening on any given day, and it helped me see things through the eyes of the people that were around Lafayette. And so when he shows up in America, you think he just shows up, he's like, ha-ha, I'm French and I'm here to help you whip up on the British, But that's not how...
with a baguette over his shoulder and a horizontally striped shirt.
Exactly. But that's not what happened at all. Like he shows up and he's young, he's got some military training, but like he's never had any significant military experience, but he shows up and he's like, hey, what do we do? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you should go talk to these people. And so when he shows up on American soil, there's this period of time where he's having to like travel north to go, I want to say, I know I'm going to get some of this stuff wrong, but he went up north to, I want to say Philadelphia or something like that. And he's trying to meet with these politicians who are in charge of, what the Continental Congress wants to do and all this kind of stuff. And they kind of turn him back out on the streets. They're like, oh, okay, well, we're closed today. You're going to have to come back tomorrow. That's kind of the reception that he initially got. I think what he wanted is he wanted to show up and be a hero and be like, I'm here to help you win freedom for everyone. And when he showed up...
French nobility. My presence is a blessing.
Exactly. But the dude was like 19 or 20 at the time. It occurs to me that there's a chance that Laura Auricchio listens to this episode, and when I say things that are even a little bit off, she's going to hate it because the book was so well written. So I'm a little worried about
Believe me, everybody knows it's on you and not the book.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So
and I don't even mean that as harshly as it sounded. It's okay to not remember every detail after your first pass through a complicated, well-written history book.
Yeah. Thank you for the grace there. Long story short, I expected that when he showed up, people were going to be like, sweet, extra guns and people to use them. But that's not what happened at all.
Did he show up with men?
Yeah, he did. He showed up with men.
How many?
I want to say 3,000. No, I don't even know. No, maybe it's less than that. Hold on.
They wouldn't have turned him out on the street with 3,000 men.
How many men did Lafayette bring to America? Golly, these numbers. Oh,
3,000 men.
In December, yeah, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, man. It's a lot. He showed up. Yeah, he showed up young, and he had all these people with him. I don't remember, man. It was thousands, if I recall. But a lot of them didn't make the trip up with him. He was talking about how hard it was to travel in America because, it was difficult. They didn't have interstates back then, obviously. I was talking on a telecon today, and somebody was in Virginia and somebody was in Pennsylvania. That's funny. That literally happened today. And he said, how long would it take you to come visit? And he said, 4 hours. And I thought, wow, Lafayette would have loved that. So anyway, I thought this was a guy that just showed up and kicked butt, and that's not the case at all. This is a guy that showed up, and he thought he was going to be important, and he wasn't. And he had to earn his stripes, and he had to slowly gain favor with people, and he did so with George Washington. And he was given small tasks, and I really get the sense early on that Washington and other people were using him. They're like, hey, it would be really good to, use this young man's ambition and zeal to solidify, France's support in this whole thing. I mean, it was really interesting how I think he kind of got played to begin with.
That was like an unpaid internship.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Except this was even worse because he was paying. He was spending his money to do stuff. Like, this guy really, really wanted to be important. Like, his dad died earlier. So one theme that you see throughout the whole thing is he really looks up to George Washington in a big way. Like, I get the impression...
Well, can I pause you there just for a second before we get on to the next thought? I want to hear about the relationship between him and George Washington. Did you get the sense from the book that he was here to fight because of Enlightenment, Jean-Jacques Rousseau style revolutionary liberal ideas, or that he was here because of the French aristocratic noble sense of, I have to earn favor by victory in battle and making a name for myself?
My opinions about this guy changed throughout the book. Like, early on, I didn't think it was anything more than selfish ambition. I figured out early in my head, oh, this dude just showed up because he wants to earn his stripes, so to speak. But as things went on, I noticed that he started doing things that didn't really make sense. Like, why would you do that unless you really believe in equality and liberty? Why would you do that? Because that's dumb. That's going to cost you political points to do that. And so I think later, as there's some turning point where he really buys in, and he's like, hey, this is what I'm going to fight for. I'm going to die in this foxhole. Only they didn't have foxholes then. So the answer to your question is different. He showed up, in my mind, wanting to be important. And he slowly started buying in. And some of the early disagreements he had, because he wanted to be appointed over some soldiers and troops and stuff, he was rejected and turned down and all that kind of stuff. But then he was initially wounded at the Battle of Brandywine. And that's where, at the end of the action, George Washington wrote something nice about him, and that got published. And then at that moment in time, it really solidified that he was a part of this effort. So Lafayette is trying to gain his stripes, and he's trying to be more important, and he's just begging Washington for command of his troops. And eventually, Washington gives him an opportunity. He sends him to watch this organized retreat as the British are they're trying to retreat from, I think it was Philadelphia. They began to evacuate Philadelphia in May 1778. Yeah. So the British were evacuating Philadelphia in May 1778, and Washington sent Lafayette with this small force of like 2,200 people. He had some regulars. He also had some Native American warriors fighting with him. Anyway, so he's hanging out on this hill called Barren Hill, and he is waiting for the British to retreat. But the British get word that he's there, and this is his, like, he is the commander at this moment in time, and he had received instructions from Washington, like, look, dude, don't get destroyed. You're a significant portion of the fighting force of the Continental Army. Just go watch and make sure they do an organized retreat, report back with information. So as he's there, the British commander was like, hey, I realize what's going on. We got a person up there on the hill. I can surround them in no time. And so Lafayette had received specific instructions not to loiter in one place too long, but he did. He camped overnight in this one area, and he gave them enough time to encircle him. And he almost got destroyed, but he was able to sneak out through this back road. And the papers kind of wrote some bad stuff about him after that, about like, oh man, the British would have destroyed him, but they let him go. If the British would have got there 30 minutes earlier, they would have just had his head on a platter. So I tell you this because it's interesting to see Lafayette learn how to command troops, and he learns all of these really important military tactical maneuvers like real time. I can't imagine how complicated that is. He's learning about information. He's learning about, people that have been battle hardened or up against him. He's learning all this stuff, and he's trying not to get destroyed while he's learning it. I don't know.
And the whole reason he was given this commission was that he impressed Washington after being injured at Brandywine, and Washington wrote some stuff about him?
I don't know. Clearly their relationship was growing stronger, and Washington saw something in him and wanted to give him a shot. That's the impression I got. He's like, hey, this guy's trying. I think he really believes the things he's saying, and I'm going to give him a chance. And so he gave him a chance, and that resulted in this action at Barren Hill. But he was able to
knowing what I know now, I'm good with that. Like if George Washington looks at somebody and is like, son, you've got potential. Command these troops. Things generally worked out for George Washington, so that's cool. But at the time, people didn't know how things were going to work out for George Washington.
No.
It's a pretty risky vouch on his part, I guess is what I'm saying.
Exactly. Especially because he was such a young person. Imagine 19-year-old Matt Whitman or 20-year-old Matt Whitman being given 2,200 men and said, hey, there's this major military leader, pick your bad guy, these Taliban forces or these ISIS forces. They're evacuating from Aleppo. And what I want you to do is take this small contingent of people. You've got some locals, and I want you to go find an observation point on the hill. By the way, there's no such thing as drones or intelligence in any way other than you and your eyeballs. Go overlook that hill and make sure they withdraw in an orderly fashion from Aleppo and come back and report. And you're 19 and 20, and you're commanding these older people that have fought in wars and battles before, and maybe not, I don't know.
With a language barrier.
With a language barrier. And
on terrain that is not native to me.
And then you get the word, hey, we're being surrounded by ISIS. Okay, well, let's go this way. Well, we just found out they're over there too. What do you do? What do? You freak out, right?
Yeah, and successful retreat there is victory.
Exactly. And that's the magic of what Lafayette did at this moment. He kept his cool, and he thought, and he was able to figure out a way out of the situation. And the fact that he kept his cool under duress was going to be a theme for the rest of his life. I mean, we even see this long after the American Revolution when he's dealing with the French Revolution. So anyway, all that to say, I'm going to butcher it if I go into what all he did in the American Revolution, but it's amazing to realize the incredible role that this young man played in a foreign nation. And he became an adopted son of the United States, which is incredible. I mean, he bought in early. Like, think about people that bought into Bitcoin before anybody knew about Bitcoin.
Yeah. And I can think of people who bought into Bitcoin right after everybody knew about Bitcoin. It's different. The result is different.
The result is different. So Lafayette was the kind of guy that tripled down before anybody knew what was going to come out of it. He's like, I'm all in on this America thing. Fascinating, right?
Well, and just the time investment. I mean, money and men aside, how long did it take to sail across the Atlantic at that point? A month? 6 weeks?
It was more than that, yeah.
That's not a quick trip.
No.
So just the time investment to go that far from home with that technology, I think that's incredible. And was it him or Rochambault who was back and forth at least once doing diplomatic stuff?
Well, Lafayette went back as well. He went back to France at the time, and he kind of had to roll up to the king and be like, yeah, I went to the New World and did some stuff. And, you got to remember, he wasn't really told to go. So he kind of did it on his own accord. But he took some papers with him where people were like, hey, this Lafayette guy, he's pretty cool. He's done great things for us, and we know that you, the king, allowed that to happen, and so we're going to give you honor and glory for all the things that Lafayette has done. And so there was kind of this moment where the king was a little ticked at Lafayette because he kind of disobeyed an order. However, things turned out all right. So he had to kind of punish Lafayette, but he didn't want to do it too hard because it worked out well for him. So he did this weird, if I recall, he did this thing where he was under house arrest for a short amount of time or something like that. I forget exactly what the punishment was, but he gambled and he won, essentially. Anyway, Lafayette developed personal relationships with many of the founding fathers. And he did this in a language that he was just learning, or he was getting better at all the time, right? And some of the more interesting things that happened were his conversations through letters with people like John Adams. What I love about a book like this is it gives you a sense of how these other people behave and act and what their temperaments are. Like, I'm not a big fan of John Adams anymore because of this book.
Really? Did you ever see the HBO series on John Adams with, was it Paul Giamatti? I think it was.
No.
That's worth your time. Before you decide what you think of John Adams, go watch that. See if it lines up with the impression you got from this book. Great series.
Well, right now, I kind of got the impression that he was grouchy and not afraid to tell you if he didn't like you. So,
oh, yeah, that's John Adams. Okay. Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah, because one of the cool things about this book is they actually read the letters that these people wrote to each other. And so Lafayette would write him something and be like, hey, so I didn't get your letter back. And, I wrote you, you didn't respond, which tells me that maybe my letter didn't get through. And John Adams, to the effect of like, no, I got your letter. You didn't just ask any good questions. So I just didn't really care to respond. I mean, that's the kind of impression you get. So anyway, let's fast forward through the American Revolution, which is crazy to say, because that's what I thought Lafayette was, right? I thought he was this guy that did amazing things in the American Revolution.
Sure.
But do you know anything about what he did afterwards? Do you know anything about...
I know he went home and the French Revolution happened right after that. So I know this much. When he went home, things under Louis XVI, King of France in the 1780s, were bad. The economy was rough. The outlay of funds, even to support the whole American Revolution thing, had the crown backed into a bit of a corner, and there was enough unrest that the king's, I don't know which advisor it would have been, one of the king's key advisors decided that he wanted to pull together the General Assembly of France in 1789. That would be your clergy, your nobility, and your common folk. And this would be the first time that such an emergency had occurred, that it required the risk of bringing together the Estates General. It's a sense like 1600-ish was the last time they'd done it. I bet it had been 250 years, ballpark, since they did this for the last time. And so stuff was desperate when he got back. I know that much.
Yeah.
But I don't know where he fits. I don't know what he did.
Lafayette wrote this document. It's called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. What does that sound like to you?
Whoa. He did not.
He did.
That's the French Bill of Rights that was signed. I got this. It's so famous, I know the date. It was signed August 4th, 1789, the month after the Great Terror that happened out in the wilds after Bastille Day on the 14th of July. I mean, that's that's like a Western liberal seminal document. Lafayette did not write that. Did he really?
He wrote it in consultation with Thomas Jefferson. Yes. As you know, Thomas Jefferson knew French.
Got to be. Yes, I certainly did know that.
I know. Isn't that crazy? So we just think, in my mind, Lafayette was this dude that came over and like just fought and then went back to France. But when he went back to France, he did huge things. Huge things.
Do you know the story of how we got to the beginning of August 1789? Like what happened between, I think it was May that the General Assembly or the Estates General was to be called. What happened in that 3-month period?
Please tell me.
I'll go with the skimming version.
No. I don't want
everything.
I don't want the skimming version. I want you to explain to me. I read it in the book, and I can tell you where I was running at the moment I heard the story, because you know that's how my brain works. But
I can tell you what chair I was sitting in freshman year Western Civ when I heard the story for the first time. So we have that in common.
Tell me.
May 5th, 1789 is the date that the Estates General was supposed to meet for the first time. And again, I don't know exactly the number of years, like 250 years. This is a huge risk on the part of the crown because these people wield actual authority according to French law. So if you're an absolute monarch, and this is the end of the age of absolute monarchs, I mean, think of the Sun King, Louis XIV, kings did as they please. Well, you would never want to call someone else to power who can't wield their power unless called to court. You would never want to do that unless you had no choice. And so some reforms were needed. They're going to call and they're going to have this meeting. But 250 years is a long time for people to get bent out of shape about some things and have some grievances stored up. And so they come to court on the 5th of May, and there's all of this political turmoil underneath with the third estate. Now, the first estate is the clergy. The second estate is the nobility. The third estate is the commoners. And since then, we've added the fourth estate, which is the media, not related to this whole French Revolution thing. Well, the commoners now make up like almost statistically like 100% of the population of France.
Right.
It's got to be like high 90s at least because, well, you don't need that many nobles and you don't need that much clergy. And they're kind of in cahoots. And the commoners pay all the taxes. If I remember it, I don't think clergy or I don't think the church paid any taxes and nobility didn't pay taxes. And so, of course, this is going to be a powder keg. And on top of that, they all just saw what happened in the American Revolution. And on top of that, the majority of the thinkers that fueled the American Revolution, rock star names like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, that sounds pretty French. There are exceptions, John Locke, etc. The Enlightenment was big in Scotland and in France as well. And so there's all this excitement on the part of your third estate to try out what America's doing. Maybe not with bloodshed, maybe not with a complete overhaul, but there's interest in a constitutional monarchy or a constitutional republic, and they don't want to pay all the taxes anymore. And so this all starts to percolate in early May of 89. And Louis is like, no, we were going to get together to fix the system slightly, add a few tweaks, maybe impose a few taxes on the nobility so that we could fix a problem. We're not overhauling everything, so you can just settle down. And ultimately, go ahead.
Yeah, well, think about the weird position that he's in, right? So he's a monarch that just supported a revolution to get a whole nation out from under a monarch. And so he is, I mean, that's a lot of double talk. Oh, by the way, they shouldn't have a monarch, but you people who I'm telling to pay for the revolution over there, you should continue being cool with me being your monarch. I mean, just think about that.
Well, and effectively what he's doing there in supporting the American Revolution, it's not because of Enlightenment ideals and because he wants to go and wave the colors and stand on the barricade to fight the oppressor.
It's a thumb in the eye of England. Yeah.
A thumb of the eye in England. But think about this. Who were the kings of England at the time? They were the Hanovers. Where are the Hanovers from?
Well, I don't know. Where are they?
Germany.
Yeah.
So he has a chance to double thumb in the eye two of his three main rivals in one move. Maybe he had some sympathies, but it was hugely advantageous to him to...
Who was his third rival?
Spain.
Okay.
Yeah, Spain was in pretty significant decline by this point, but, you know, their neighbors, France and Spain, always had competing economic interests. But, I mean, the big one would be England at this point. And so, yeah, he triangulates himself into this awful situation and effectively has to decide that he's just going to ban the third estate from participating, or maybe we just can't have meetings at all. Maybe we just can't have meetings at all. And so it gets to be June, and the third estate shows up, and they're like, oh, well, let's have our meeting. This is really important. This is like mid-June, and everything's locked up, and they're not allowed in. I'm like, fine, we'll have our own dang meeting. So they go to these tennis courts across the street. And I've always assumed it's just like legit like tennis courts. They go in there, they take the thing over. They have like American Revolutionary fervor conversations, and they swear that they are not going to rest, not going to back off until they've established a constitution. Well, this motivates a lot of people, and people, quickly realize that there's a deadlock here. The Estates General has been called. One of the three estates won't play ball, and they have the numbers. So what do? Well, what happens is that a bunch of the clergy and nobility, seeing the situation, come on board with the tennis court oath crowd. And they're like, no, actually, you guys might have a point about this whole liberal Western democracy constitution thing. And so now it's not so neatly divided as one of the three estates is on the outs with the others. Is kind of mingled, and there's some real momentum coming together for change. Well, the people of Paris are getting pretty worked up. They don't maybe understand what all of the debate is about, but they can sense that things are changing. And what to us is the 4th of July, to the French is the 14th of July, 1789. This is kind of the day the revolution really begins. It's Bastille Day. And, the Bastille now is it's like a Virgin Records or something. But on the spot where that mall or store stands, there was a prison, and the prison was full of weapons. And the disarmed citizens of Paris just bum rush the Bastille like it's Area 51. They grab the weapons they need, and, well, they go about doing revolutionary things. Well, word about this spreads throughout France.
Well, there was a shot fired first. What's so interesting about the book is they go through the accounts of how all this went down. And I don't know, it's very interesting to see how it all went down, because there was more to the Bastille than that. They didn't just show up and bum rush the thing. They show up and they're like, hey, you've got weapons. Here's the deal. Something's about to happen. Let's do this peaceably. And so the person that was in charge of the Bastille opens the gate, lets down the drawbridge or whatever it was, and people went in and they negotiated. And they're like, okay, what are we going to do? Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to surrender XYZ. However, I'm going to let you blah, blah, blah. They're like, cool. Okay, so they open the gate, let the people back out. And then they start having conversations about it. And then people show up, and then boom, a shot's fired. And then it's like, oh no, here we go. And then that's when it all went down. That's when
we don't know who shot, right?
I don't know. I mean, the book seems to intone that it was somebody from the guard that shot, the guard of the Bastille, but I can't remember 100%. Nor does it really matter, because people kind of just wanted to kill people at that moment.
Yes.
And they were going to look for any excuse to do it. And so by the end of the day, you have people walking around the streets with like dead bodies kind of thing. So it's awful.
It is awful.
I just wanted to clarify, you said they bum rushed the Bastille, but there was more to it than that. It kind of played out. The guy that was in charge of the Bastille tried to be peaceable about it, but it didn't work out in the end.
Well, because normal people felt sympathy to the common people in the Third Estate.
But so
they also felt fear of the authority of the state.
So Lafayette, at this time, there's all this turmoil, right? And everybody knows that Lafayette was an important military leader in the U.S., and they were like, well, who is going to be our leader? Is it Lafayette? And so as all of this stuff is going down, should I let you finish, though? You were on a roll. I'll let you finish.
Oh, it's okay. I'll run you up to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. So then the rest of July is what's called the Great Fear. And I assume this was covered in detail in the book. But effectively, common people throughout France overthrow feudalism by force. They just get rid of their overlords and repossess their local, landlords and property holders and small-ranking local nobles. And that, to you and me, sounds pretty freaky. But when your entire social structure is based on a series of ancient oaths between families and individuals that make this giant pyramid-shaped hierarchy called feudalism that has a king at the top of the pyramid, and you start whacking away at all of the lower ranking oaths and land agreements and work agreements.
And people.
That's not just taking a shot at, how we do voting around here. That is taking a shot at everything that holds society together. And so people are rightly, absolutely panicked. And that's when we get to the leadership back in Paris of this whole, whatever this not very centralized movement is, trying to seize on the opportunity to say who they are and what they're going for and what the point is. And that's when you get to the declarations of the rights of man and of the citizen.
What role do you think Lafayette played in all that?
Well, I had no idea that he played. It's a complete blank spot in history. Had no idea what he did or that he was involved. I didn't know that he participated in that document. So I got nothing. Tell me.
You've got this struggle between Paris and Versailles, right? So all this is going down.
Paris, the masses, Versailles, the king.
Right. And so Lafayette was this voice of I don't know. It was like he was trying to still the waters. He was trying to calm the anger. So Lafayette believed in a monarchy. He wanted a constitutional monarchy, is what I understand. And you think he would be like, rights of the people. But deep down, he was cool with the king. There was this moment where, let's see, the king tried to escape at one point in time. Things got really weird. Lafayette went...
Yeah, 91, about the time of the Constitution, he had just tried to flee before the Constitution was ratified.
So at one point, Lafayette goes and escorts him back. And at all times, you can see Lafayette trying to make it work for the king. Like, he's trying desperately. He's like, look, dude, just freaking get this right. Like, I'm going to keep you alive. And I mean, there's a moment where he's escorting the king through all these people. And there's this moment where he walks out onto this balcony with the queen. And he's trying to say, hey, everything's cool here. The king is for the people. And so Lafayette's really trying to make the king get it. And it's just a really weird thing. Marie Antoinette didn't like Lafayette for many reasons. She thought he had aspirations for power. But I really believe, looking at the stuff he wrote, he desperately wanted peace. And he also wanted equality for people. And, there are letters where he wrote Washington at this point in time. And he's like, hey, what do I do? I don't know if he's asking for advice, but he's like, I'm in charge of the National Guard at this point, but the people are angry and they want to kill people. And there's this one moment where he sees the masses slaughter some people and he tries to stop it and they don't listen to him. And it's this really strange thing. This man who's a moderate really honestly wants to do what is right and good. And he's trying to fight anger on one side and he's trying to fight the old world on the other. And he finds himself right in the middle. And he's one of the most unique characters in all of history because he was first-person participant in two revolutions, and not just a participant, a major participant in both revolutions.
But not fully bought in to the Enlightenment, revolutionary, liberal rhetoric of the day, or he wouldn't have been advocating for a king.
What do you mean, though? Because there's this...
What did he imagine an absolute monarch would do
to
cooperate with a liberal revolution?
I didn't say absolute monarch. I said constitutional monarchy.
Right, but what I'm saying is Louis XVI was an absolute monarch at the time, coming off of an era of maximum unchecked power. Maximum unchecked power. And so I guess my question is maybe rhetorical, and I'm also asking, like, what did he imagine that an absolute monarch would do to cooperate with a liberal revolution? How did he imagine it would work?
Yeah, and I'm pushing back on that and saying I've led you astray if I'm implying that he was for an absolute monarchy, because he most certainly wasn't.
I've led you astray by communicating poorly. I am not suggesting that he was for an absolute monarchy. Clearly, he's trying to shoot the middle. He's arguing for a constitutional monarchy,
right? Is
what it looks like. And where I'm scratching my head is...
why would he do that?
What level of optimism would it require, or naivete, after all he'd seen, to imagine that an absolute monarch would forfeit that level of power to become what Lafayette was arguing for, which would be a constitutional monarch. So I'm tracking with you.
Right. There's this one moment, and I don't know, to answer your question. I don't know how he expected to do this, but what I can tell you is he was a pivotal person in this whole thing. You talked about this 14th of July, 1790, and what did you, that's Bastille Day, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
1789.
Right. So 1790, 1 year after Bastille Day, there's this kind of brief period where it's kind of cool, like people are kind of playing along with each other, and they decide they're going to have this huge party. It's a massive holiday throughout all of France in honor of the French Revolution. Now, remember, the king is still alive, right?
Where is the king at that point?
King's at the party. The king's at the party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My understanding is king's at Versailles, but the king was at the party. They had this huge moment where they had all these people like, hey, we're going to celebrate the creation of France. We're going to party hard. And there's this one moment where Lafayette walks out in front of everybody in this huge gathering, and he leads the nation in an oath. And this is the oath that he swears to. We swear to be forever faithful to the nation, to the law, and to the king, to uphold with all our might the Constitution as decided by the National Assembly and accepted by the king, and to remain united with all French people by the insoluble bonds of brotherhood. So you can see what he's trying to do with that oath, right?
Whoa. People accepted that? People participated?
Yeah. And then afterwards, the king took a similar vow.
But they didn't know what the Constitution was going to say yet. I mean, that's such a bad oath.
It says, as decided by the National Assembly.
Yeah. But I mean, you don't know if the National Assembly is going to get it right, and they didn't.
This is what the king said. I, king of the French, swear to use the power given to me by the constitutional act of the state to maintain the Constitution as decreed by the National Assembly and accepted by myself. So there's this valiant attempt by Lafayette to shoot the middle.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, he stands in front of everyone, like, all the paintings have like Lafayette, the big flags, a cross right there on the table as he's leading everyone in this oath. And that's like, as far as what he wanted to do, this was his moment. This was Lafayette's attempt to get it right. But as you know, the political tides changed. People realized that, hey, there's power here. We can just go for it. And they did. Everybody died pretty much in the reign of...
That's the quick version. Yeah.
Yeah. The reign of terror happened.
Well, and it wasn't just that everybody died in the reign of terror. It's that they got the new Constitution approved. They got the new legislative assembly put in place. And what was the first thing they did? Or one of the first things they did? It declared war on Austria.
Oh, yeah.
Because there were a whole bunch of nobility that they thought had departed the country to rally support to come back and undo the revolution. So you have this new constitution, and immediately it undergoes a crisis because they declare war on the party of the king in another country. And now how's the king going to keep that oath? The Constitution just empowered this legislative body to declare a fight to the death with everybody who's on the king's side but isn't currently in country. It's impossible.
So a weird thing happened around that time. As the power struggle starts changing, Lafayette is in charge of troops, right?
Some troops or all the troops? What was his role?
Forgive me. Let me figure this out.
This is really fun. I didn't know any of this. I'm not sandbagging or playing games with you. I didn't know any of this.
But what's interesting is you have an understanding of the framework around which all these events took place. And so you have the broad architecture where you can fit these puzzle pieces. I do not. I know the ambitions of a man who wanted to have he wanted to be a great warrior and make a name for himself, and he wanted to make people work together, but I didn't understand the world in which he lived. And so you would get a tremendous amount out of reading this book, far more than me.
I'm reading the book. I mean, you sold me on that a long time ago in this conversation. I'm reading the book.
Yeah. Well, what if we do this? There's this moment where when all this is going down, Lafayette is in charge of the troops. I think he was either over the National Guard or I forget what he was over. But there's this moment where he gives an order. He's like, hey, you guys do this thing. And then they disobey immediately. They kind of look at him like, well, I don't know. I think it was like he wanted them to swear an oath or something like that. And they wouldn't do it. They were all silent.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, snap. That's the moment, isn't it? The game is up. I'm done. And so
I've been there.
He flees. He's like, I've lost the will of the people. I'm done. And so he flees to Austria, and then he's imprisoned.
When did that happen? Do you know what year?
I don't, man. That's the thing. I don't know the framework here like you do. So
that's really interesting, though, because if that's in 1791, I would be shocked. If it's in 1792, it makes a ton of sense.
It looks like it was in 1792.
Did they talk about Maximilien Robespierre in the book?
No, I don't remember that name.
Okay, he was the guy who was in charge of the Jacobin Club, the party that had greater power over the Girondins, and the Jacobins arrested the king in 92 after declaring war on Austria, and that's when your whole reign of terror, everybody who could even be possibly associated with disagreeing with the Jacobins is going to have to go to the guillotine. And so if you're telling me it's in 1792, yeah, Lafayette better get the heck out of Dodge, and he better take his family with him.
Yeah, and so what they did is they, like most tyrants do in history, or reigns of terror basically, the first thing they do is consolidate power. And as soon as they consolidated power, they're like, oh, cool, we can do anything. Well, it's like this. Either you think the right things, or we take all of your stuff and we kill your family and whatever we want to do.
You got to purge the useful idiots. Seriously, this is how they all follow this framework. When a revolution turns tyrannical and bloodthirsty, first thing you do is kill the people who helped get you there, who are smart enough to be dangerous and who might now raise a hand of question or opposition as to your new methods. Excuse me, it just seems like a lot of the killing and stuff that we're doing is why we had a revolution, to get rid of that. And I guess I just had a question about guillotine. You got to get rid of the useful idiots. And that's what the reign of terror is.
Yep.
Well, part of what it is.
The interesting thing about all this is the role his wife played in all this.
I don't even know his wife's name. Who was he married to?
Adrienne. It's a beautiful name.
Adrienne. Huh. That is a beautiful name.
She was an interesting woman. So here's the deal, dude. I feel like an idiot explaining all this, but I have been DMing with the author of the book, Laura Auricchio, and I want to see if she'll just hop on the phone. Yeah.
Hop on the phone now?
Yes. She says here in the DMs, I could do a quick call. And she gave me her phone number.
Okay, I have two thoughts on that quickly.
Yeah.
One, you're not coming off like an idiot. I'm blown away by how, like, this is your first pass at the French Revolution and all of this stuff. You've retained a stunning amount, and you're teaching me all kinds of things. So I won't accept your self-deprecation. And two, yeah, I'm kind of nervous to talk to somebody this smart, but we should definitely have her on if she will.
It's very clear that just the way she wrote the book, you can tell a lot about what kind of person she is. Like, she's not doing it to try to make a name for herself. I get the impression that she wants the story to be told correctly for history.
I know what it's like to fall in love with a historical question and vanish down the rabbit hole, but I'm guessing this is a much deeper rabbit hole than any I've been down for her.
Yeah, so let's go talk to Laura Auricchio and see what she has to say.
Let's do.
Okay, Matt, I was actually able to get Laura Auricchio on the phone. Am I saying your name correctly, Laura?
You are. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm sorry I messed it up in the video. So Laura wrote a book about Marquis de Lafayette, or what's his real name, Laura? How do you say it?
Oh, his real name is very long. It starts with Gilbert and ends with Lafayette.
Awesome.
So people go with Lafayette.
Yes, I think Lafayette, the Marquis de Lafayette.
So, Laura, this book was amazing, and I just want to understand why you wrote it. Like, you clearly did a huge research project to do this. Why did you write this book?
Yeah, thank you so much. It took me about 7 years to research it. And I think the reason I wrote it is that I actually specialize in French history, not American. And I knew that in France, Lafayette is not a hero. And it dawned on me that that would probably come as a surprise to most Americans, because in the United States, we've got all these places named after Lafayette. And, we've got Lafayette Park right across from the White House. Lafayette is everywhere. But in France, he's really not beloved, to say the least. And I thought that I had something new to contribute to the American conversation by telling the story of a man who, beloved as he is here, is really not loved in his native land.
Well, can I ask the obvious question? Why not?
You have to read the book.
Yeah, that's what I'm wrestling through with him right now, Laura. I'm trying to teach it. So a little bit of background on Matt. Matt is actually, I don't know if you'd call yourself a historian, Matt, but he's got several degrees in the areas of history and military tactics and things of that nature. So this is a really interesting moment where I was able to read your book and know some things that Matt didn't quite have insight into, even though he's super educated in the topic.
Fantastic. Well, then, Matt, you're exactly the perfect audience for this book, because the book is really meant for Americans who know a lot about history or history buffs, but who might be surprised to learn that Lafayette is not well loved in his own nation. So the short version is this. Essentially, he was always something of an outsider in France. He was born into this old family of nobility, but they were from the provinces, and they were not the most sophisticated or chic, as we might say today. And through a series of early marriages and early deaths in his family, he ended up very wealthy, and he ended up married into a family that was very close to the king. And so he spent a lot of time at Versailles, where he was really an outsider. So he came to the United States in part to reinvent himself. And when he got here, he really succeeded. He came here with the intention, I believe, of making a name for himself, of achieving glory. And he succeeded. That reputation carried back to France with him, and when the French Revolution began, he was originally hailed by Paris as sort of the French George Washington, as the man who was going to lead France to a new era of freedom. As it happened, though, Lafayette actually opposed the creation of an American-style republic in France. So although he supported changes to the monarchy, he did not support the creation of a republic. And so as the French Revolution grew more polarized, he actually ended up being really disliked by both sides. The monarchists blamed him for starting the revolution, and the Republicans blamed him for thwarting the revolution.
I could see how that would make him reviled. That's a lose-lose.
Yep.
Did his military career continue during the revolution, and which side did he fight on?
Yes. So his military career did continue during the French Revolution, but he eventually abandoned his troops. So he fought on the French national side, but essentially what happened was he was considered a traitor to the nation. People thought that he was against the Republic, and people thought that he was out to become a despot himself, that he wanted to take over the country himself. And so there were calls for his arrest, calling out from Paris while he was with his troops, and he ended up fleeing across the border to what's now the Netherlands. I guess it was the Austrian-Netherlands, part of Austria at the time. Okay. And he fled France as an enemy of the revolution. And when he got to Austria, he was arrested as an enemy of the monarchy.
And Laura, I have to say, you made me fall in love with his wife, Adrienne.
Oh, I'm so glad. She was wonderful, isn't she?
Yeah. And so like the fact that she went to jail with him, and Matt, it was this genius political move by his wife where everyone else had deserted him, and she sends her son, George Washington, to the U.S. And that's really, you only had one sentence in the book about that. I would have loved to learn more about that. But she sent his son, George Washington, over to the U.S., and she went to prison, and she stayed in prison with Lafayette and really turned the tide of public sentiment in his favor, would you say?
Yep, absolutely. Not just her, but she brought her two daughters too. And basically she showed up at the door of the prison and said, if you're going to keep my husband, you have to keep me too. Wow. And in they went.
Yeah.
So when were they in prison? Was it under the Jacobins?
No. This was in Austria. They were in various and sundry prisons throughout the Austrian Empire. So again, they were being held there not as enemies of the Republic, but they were being held there as enemies of the monarch.
Well, he couldn't win.
What's so interesting to me is I feel like throughout this entire thing, you have Adrienne being patient with her husband, who's often quick to do whatever he thinks is right in the moment. And she's silently waiting in the background. And then she does this well-executed, well-thought-through strategic play to bail him out. It seems like that happened often.
It did. I think he was really lucky to have her. I feel like every marriage needs one of these people who has a good head on their shoulders. And she managed to get him out of jail. And she also managed to recuperate a lot of their lost property because their property was confiscated because he was declared an enemy of the people. And most of her family was executed as enemies of the people. So she had a lot of property that she really took charge of trying to get back.
It's amazing. So Laura, one thing that you share in common with Matt is Matt through the years has told me about moments where he's studied a topic really deep detail and he's, tried to understand the intentions of the people involved. And then Matt, do you want to describe a time or two where you've actually gone physically to the place and you've experienced the room that the setting happened in or something like that? That's a thing you like to do, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I have done all of this work on the travels and letters of Paul outside the Bible. And then my first trip to the Mamertine prison, where most likely 2 Timothy was written, and you get this deeply emotional version of Paul, it was just staggering to me. So there's this whole extra journey and later life of Paul that looks like it happens after the biblical account. And so getting to see that was emotional for me. It was overwhelming because I feel like I know the guy.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've never been to the Holy Land, but it's definitely on my bucket list. And it's precisely for that reason, because I feel like being in a place just brings to life the stories, the characters, and in a way that you can't experience otherwise. So yeah, I did that. I was fortunate enough to have a grant that allowed me to go on a sort of pilgrimage of sorts to Lafayette's hometown and to a lot of other places that were really important to Lafayette. So something I tried to do in the book was really to evoke the look and feel of those places.
I just want to say you succeeded. You did an excellent job making me feel like I could hear the hoofbeats on the cobblestone streets. And your writing wasn't incredibly... you didn't go over the top with being flowery as you described things, but it was very clear to me that you stayed on the side of truth and things that you could prove through historical research. But you did a really good job between those facts, just painting the picture of what revolutionary France looked like to me. And
thank you.
It was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really my goal. I mean, I'm an art historian, first of all. So when you're an art historian, when you're trained in art history, you're trained in sort of translation. So you're trained in describing paintings in words. And so it's just a little bit of an extrapolation to describe a building or a place or an event. And I did do a great deal of research. I mean, I think I read every newspaper from the 1790s in Paris, and I really did try to stay on the side of truth. I did not invent any scenes. I didn't invent any events. But, the events of the time were just so staggering and dramatic that I don't think I could have invented them. I mean, remarkable, horrifying, tragic, and, thrilling all at the same time.
And politically loaded even to this day. So for you to go and sort through that, I bet you must have become familiar with the biases of even the different journalists of the time.
Absolutely. And that was actually one of the most fascinating things for me, because there was one episode, in fact, the episode that probably put the nail in the coffin of Lafayette's reputation was something that went down in history as the massacre at the Champ de Mars. Now, the Champ de Mars is the place that we might know today as the place where the Eiffel Tower is. It's the park where the Eiffel Tower is.
Sure.
But the Eiffel Tower wasn't there yet. And the massacre at the Champ de Mars was when Lafayette was in charge of the French National Guard during the Revolution. A crowd gathered in the Champ de Mars in order to sign a petition declaring the monarchy abdicated because the king and queen had attempted to flee the country. And exactly what happened, we don't know. We know that Lafayette and the National Guard on horseback arrived at the scene. They were called into the scene. Stones were thrown, shots were fired, and Lafayette's men fired upon the people who were gathered.
I had no idea that was Lafayette. It's the French Revolution version of the Boston Massacre, Destin. Yeah. I mean, that's what people would like. And I had no idea it was Lafayette, though.
It was Lafayette. And so today, if you take one of those, I know. So if you take one of those hop-on, hop-off buses in Paris and it goes by the Champ de Mars, they might actually tell you this is where Lafayette fired on the people. So this is why he's not beloved. But the thing is that to this day, I can't tell you how many people died because although I read every account I could lay my hands on, the numbers range anywhere from 3 to 5 to 80 because each newspaper, each journalist had their own version of the truth.
What was interesting, I feel like I played through the French Revolution through Lafayette's eyes, and the tactics that are being used today, the misinformation, the media being applied in negative ways to support whatever side you want. It was fascinating. I mean, it's even to the point of making, erotic pornographic pamphlets that you distributed to try to smear the reputations of Lafayette and other people involved. I mean, that's the one part of the book that I wasn't expecting. I can say that. So
the book is not G-rated.
Nor is history.
Yeah. I mean, Matt, I don't know if you realize it, but you're probably talking to one of the world experts in French Revolution pornographic pamphlets.
Yeah. I mean, there actually are people who are greater experts than I am in the subject because it's actually a subject that's gotten a lot of attention. But I do know more than my fair share.
If you think about it, Laura, it was like an early version of deep fakes. Deepfakes, of course, are the problem today. So, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. The same types of things that are trying to tear apart our society today was happening back in the French Revolution. And that's the world you opened up for me. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this.
That's great. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to read it and to, and to talk to me about it. It's delightful. The book came out a while ago now. And so I'm just shocked and delighted that people are still interested in talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm impressed because theoretically, my friend Destin will tolerate history things, and he does a good job once you get his interest. But normally that takes a bit of a sales pitch to convince him of why a thing matters, and he'll badger me about that when I'm trying to tell him something matters. So for you to just write a book and present it in such a way that he would go and latch onto that and then want to talk about nothing but this book for weeks on end, you've done a great job because I know, no, I'm not. It's wonderful. And it's wonderful that he knows inside and out something that I've only got some vague recollections of, and he's teaching me things. So as somebody who's been around people who can be a tough sell on the deep dive history stuff, you've clearly done something amazing with this book because of what I see it doing in my friend. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm really grateful to you both.
Well, last question, Laura, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah.
We know you're busy,
Sure.
But what are you working on now? And well, first of all, where do you work, and what are you working on now? I know you're a professor.
So I'm actually the dean of Fordham College at Lincoln Center. So you might know Fordham University in New York. It's a Jesuit University of New York. And I am the dean of Fordham College at Lincoln Center. And at the moment, I'm working largely on that. I started this job in August. So this has really become, it's very much a full-time job. That said, I am doing some work a little bit on actually global trade in the age of the American Revolution, with a particular emphasis on Hamilton's role in really fostering global trade.
That's a great project. You can get that to press. People will be all over it.
It's a great project. It's really fun, and it's also largely based in New York. So that's the thing. The Lafayette book really required me to do a lot of traveling. But since this new job is really, extremely exciting and something I really want to be devoting myself to, I can't really travel so much for research right now. So things that are in New York, archives that are in New York, and streets I can walk in New York and try to recreate the same way I did for Paris. That's really what I'm trying to focus on now. So it's really fun. It's really fun. Lafayette has sort of brought me from France to the United States.
What an incredible honor to get that post. Well earned. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm the first woman, actually, to be the dean here at Fordham College's Lincoln Center campus.
Then double congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's an honor.
All right. Well, that is Laura Auricchio, The Marquis, Lafayette Reconsidered. It's a book you've got to listen to. And again, you can do that on Audible. Go to audible.com/NDQ and get that book. You will not be disappointed. It's amazing. It made me learn things that I didn't even know existed. It was wonderful. Laura, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate your time, and we wish you the best in what you're doing moving forward.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine, and I wish you all the best, too. You do great work.
It was a delight. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
What I want to do is make this actual Audible thing succinct and crisp because this whole episode is you talking about how much Audible has changed your life by reading this book.
Okay, well, let's just say that.
Okay, say that.
Okay, as Matt was just saying, this whole episode is sponsored by Audible. This book has changed my life, and if you would like to get this book for free, you can do so by going to audible.com/NDQ or texting the word NDQ, or the letters NDQ rather, to 500 500. You can get 2 free Audible originals when you do that. You need to try Audible for 30 days. But this book was amazing, and it made me think deep things about topics I was not taught from the French perspective, for example, when I was in school. So I love it. I think you will too. It's called The Marquis de Lafayette Reconsidered by Laura Auricchio. You can get it, again, by going to audible.com/NDQ or texting the letters NDQ to 500 500. And you can also get 2 free Audible originals when you do that.
Couldn't agree more. We love Audible. If you're the kind of person who likes conversations like this, Audible is going to totally make sense for you. So again, audible.com/NDQ or text NDQ to 500 500. You get your first audiobook for free and then 2 Audible originals when you try it out for 30 days. We love this, and we're crazy grateful that they support the podcast.
Yeah, and I think it'd be cool to support Laura because she's done a really good job here. 7 years of her life, and you can just download this info to your brain. It's a neat way to do it.
I'll be the first person to go and grab this one. You've got me completely sold.
So Marquis de Lafayette, who was he? In my mind,
I don't know. Oh, I thought you were asking me. I'm sorry. But no, now I want to answer it because it's a really good question. And the fun is, I don't know. I don't understand why he would go back and vouch for a constitutional monarchy. Was he the kind of guy who was really excited about freedom and liberty and the Enlightenment ideals, but just couldn't bring himself to part ways with all of the privilege that came with being a nobleman? Or was he a pragmatist who understood that to just burn down the French monarchy would lead to the chaos that came in the Robespierre era and then in the Napoleonic age, which was a dumpster fire after that? Was he the only guy who saw what would happen? I don't know. I have to read this book because I want to know her take on it.
I think ultimately, for me, he was a young man who saw what George Washington did, and he wanted to follow in his footsteps, all the way to the way George Washington set up his library and his home at Mount Vernon. Like he wanted to figure out how to emulate that. There's a lot of talk about Cincinnatus in this book. And briefly, would you explain who Cincinnatus is?
I never remember, but Cincinnatus was a statesman in Rome who is regarded as being someone who was bold but ran the middle to bring about peace.
Cincinnatus was this guy that defended Rome against invaders, and they tried to make him Caesar, and he said, no, I'm going to retire to my farm, and I'm going to go plow the fields. And so if you go to the city of Cincinnati, there's this famous statue of Cincinnatus plowing his fields. And so there's this thought circulating around this time frame that George Washington was like Cincinnatus, and I think Lafayette really wanted to emulate that big time. Like he wanted to be the guy. But he didn't
get that, did he?
Not in France. No, he didn't. I mean, he's kind of viewed as this guy that bumbled and messed a bunch of stuff up in France. He was just like another important guy in certain areas. But like when you think of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and all these people during the American Revolution, you think of these great heroes that, you know, whether it's true or not, we're told that they always did things right, which is not true. We know a lot of these guys were slaveholders. And so in France, they don't have that same type of view of Lafayette. He's just like a guy that did some stuff in history back then, you know?
Well, the American Revolution was so easy and simple and straightforward. Good guy, bad guy, win war, be free. The French Revolution is a 40-year mess. So anybody who swam in that dirty water, I would expect, I mean, who is the hero of the French Revolution? Is there a
Napoleon
character that you can think of? No.
He's not the hero, but he came out on top.
Sort of. I mean, you live out your life in exile. That's not really on top. And all of Europe marshaled against him to defeat him. This is important, man. The point is, what you're telling me about Lafayette, what the author is telling me about Lafayette, really makes him kind of a symbol of the very complex, wandering notion of the French Revolution. It wasn't easy. It wasn't straightforward. It was much more difficult to unmake something as concrete and calcified as French culture, as European feudalism, than it was to unmake the relatively new world culture that existed. And so I don't see how Lafayette or anybody could have won there. And I'm sorry that he didn't get to go and plow fields at the end. I think it's a really noble ambition.
Okay, a lot of people ask me what podcasts I listen to. I've got that message a lot recently. And Jordan Harbinger is the answer to that question. Dude, you do amazing shows. And I wanted to tell people about this episode I listened to recently with Scott Young, the Ultra Learning episode.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the opportunity, man. Yeah, this guy, Scott Young, I mean, I used to say kid, but I've known him for like 10 years. Now it's just weird for me to say that. But this is a guy who learned the entire MIT 4-year computer science curriculum in 11 months, and he learned 4 languages in 1 year. And at first I thought he's just a genius, but really, he wrote a book called Ultra Learning. He's got a list of mistakes you're probably making when you try to learn something new, and he goes over people like Richard Feynman, Benjamin Franklin, and he goes over the concepts and things that so far that we can distill from them, how these people have used ultra learning to rise to the top of their fields. It's not just about having a high IQ or being great at studying. There's a lot of really simplified ways to learn things, and there's a lot of mistakes that people like you and I might make when we're trying to learn something, such as relying on an app when we're learning a language and knowing a bunch of vocabulary but having no idea how to string it together.
Oh, yeah. Recently, my family and I, we went to Costa Rica and we did the immersion thing. And after listening to this episode, I realized that you guys had some specific tricks about immersion and how to do that. And I know you're learning Chinese with flashcards, but this is a fascinating episode. It made me rethink how I learn. So it's like a meta learning type thing. And as you point out in the episode, like that's a buzzword, but man, I learned a lot about how I learn by listening to this episode. So if it's cool with you, dude, I would like to link that episode in the show notes here so people can find you. And I appreciate you telling people about our stuff as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is episode 241 with Scott Young on the Jordan Harbinger Show.
Thanks, man. It's good stuff. Like I jumped in initially on the sand episode, but I'm devouring your stuff. You do good work, man.
Thank you.
I want to tell you 2 things about Lafayette that really, I don't know, things I learned in the book that were interesting to me. Lafayette visited Washington, and they talked about all kinds of things. And Lafayette was kind of weirded out that Washington had slaves, right? And Lafayette wanted to lead his American brothers to abolition in a roundabout way. So he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to purchase this land in Cayenne, or maybe it's Cayenne, I don't know how to say it, Cayenne. I'm going to purchase this land with slaves, and I'm going to show you that you can eventually free these slaves. Like there is an economic model through which you can do that, and I'll let these guys live there as tenants or whatever. He purchased slaves, so Lafayette's record is not unblemished in that area, even though he's on record time and time again talking about the freedom and the rights of men. His goal was to lead these slave owners by demonstrating that you could own slaves and then not own slaves and free the people. He didn't have a chance to do that because all of his possessions were repossessed when he no longer had favor with those in power. They repossessed his land and his slaves, so he never had the opportunity to free those slaves. And for me, that's a very small portion of his life that kind of tells you a lot about the way things were in his life. He had these great, grand ideas, but he never got a chance to see them all the way through because of the political circumstances around him. And that's kind of a bummer, you know?
Yeah.
And that, to me, that just explains a lot. And there's one other thing I want to say. Late in his life, very, very late in his life, Lafayette came back to America, and it was one of the most amazing parties that had ever happened. Because you remember, Lafayette was one of the youngest people in the American Revolution. Mm-hmm. So when he toured around America late in his life, he even came through Alabama.
Really?
Yeah, if you go to the Encyclopedia of Alabama, he came and toured every state that was part of the Union at that point in time. I want to say it was the 1820s. I may be wrong about that. But after reading this book, I went and did some research and no, because the book says, oh yeah, he went to every state, and it was like 1820 something. I was like, wait a second, Alabama was a state then. And sure enough, I went and dug through some records and found exactly Lafayette's path through the state of Alabama. And it's like, and he went to this place and he got really tired and he retired from the ball early. And then he got on a steamboat and he went down and, he ended up going over into Louisiana after that. It's fascinating. that whole tour of America in his old age, he was regarded as a hero, and they just named towns after him wherever he went. And
Is
they were
Lafayette, Louisiana, named after him?
Yeah, no doubt. What did you call it?
Isn't it Lafayette? Or did they say Lafayette?
Yeah, they call it Lafayette. Yeah.
Okay. I knew somebody from down there who always said Lafayette.
Oh, well, then I would defer to them then. They're probably right.
Got me. I don't know. There's an old joke I heard where somebody went to the Burger King in Lafayette, and they're like, hey, settle the bet. Could you slowly and clearly pronounce the name of this place? And the lady says, Burger King. Now, that's a pretty cute joke.
That was adorable.
I hate jokes, but that one's adorable.
No, that's an excellent joke. No, it was 1825 when he came. What's so cool about his tour through Alabama is he was met by a party of Creek Indians, and because they had to escort him through certain parts of the state. And he was entertained. I'm reading from the some old historical documents from Alabama. It says he was entertained by a game of stickball by some of the Creek natives. It's fast. I don't know. It's really interesting. So anyway, long story short, they kind of paraded him around as this hero of the American Revolution in the States. So he was literally imprisoned in France for a long time. He was able to get out because of his wife being awesome. And then later in life, he comes and he tours America as a hero. It's fascinating. Thanks for going on this journey with me, man. And thank you for being...
I love it. It's great.
But you've been very gracious with me because you know that I'm missing dates and I'm messing things up. And
who cares? That's not the point of history. No. Okay. Let me land the plane here, buddy.
Yeah.
Let me land the plane here.
Okay.
What we went through on the French Revolution stuff on my side, look, if you took me to even the American Revolution, I'm not going to be that dialed on it because it's not quite as date dependent. I don't know why, you just memorize these dates and you have to write essays about them and stuff. Dates are important. It's great. You want to be able to ballpark it. But when I was doing the history teacher thing at Nebraska, Kearney, and the other places where I taught, my exams would be one question, and I would give the exam on the first day of class. Like, hey, here's all you got to do. The final exam question, which will be 40% of your total grade, is tell me the story of, and then whatever topic we were covering, from whatever year we started in to whatever year we ended in. So tell me the story of American history from Reconstruction to right now. And then all the students would be like, well, what do we need to know? Well, you've got a semester to figure it out. If you think something fits well into the story and it deserves to be in your 1 hour and 20 minutes worth of writing story, put a star by it in your notes, highlight it, whatever. Construct a narrative that raises a question or tells a story. And if you can take it to that next level of this raises a historical question or here's my theory of this chunk of history, you're going to go from a good grade to an excellent grade. But you have to figure out what components need to be told. And to do that, you've got to be conversant. Well, how do we do that? I was like, well, what happens when you guys get done watching the Star Wars trilogy or septulogy or wherever we're at now? You get to the end and you might not remember exactly who said what or precisely what happened, but you can give me a good gist and I can track with the story. And that for me was kind of the measure of success. If you can tell me the story and kind of what it means after one pass, that's a huge win. And you more than did that after one trip through this book. So there was no grace needed. I'm just super impressed and grateful. And I learned stuff secondhand from a book I haven't read. You killed it, man.
Thanks, man. I really enjoyed it. So I guess that's it. That's Marquis de Lafayette. If you want the full story, go listen to the book by Laura Auricchio. And I'd like to say thanks to her for being on this episode. And also thanks to the patrons for making this possible.
Also agreed. All right, buddy. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, buddy. Have a good one.
All right.